So thank you guys all for coming here. I should say that I'm filling in for the initial person who was supposed to be moderating this, but I do have some familiarity with multi-platforming and with transmedia as a concept. I should say that I realized what transmedia narratives were through my own creative writing, through my own screenplays that I wrote, because I realized there were some stories that I wanted to tell to be in the same sort of universe, but to be a different medium. I realized that this character's story needed to be told through television. This character needed to be told through animation for budgetary costs. So those are the ways that I personally found myself experiencing and engaging in transmedia narratives. So if you guys can go through and say your name, sort of what you do, and what you're passionate about in terms of transmedia, and yeah, please.
Okay, my name is Kuwornu. I'm from Italy. I live in New York. Actually, I do documentary films. Probably I'm in the wrong panel, but okay. But I really enjoy to explore also the multimedia verse.
Good afternoon. My name's Deborah Rile Draper. I'm a writer, director, proud member of Writers Guild West. I work on documentaries and scripted. So I'm particularly interested in transmedia and how we're able to find the right places for the right stories for the right audiences. I think that's going to be incredibly critical for us in the future as we really become seasoned global storytellers.
Hi, my name is Yodit. I am from Ethiopia. I also am in documentary, but I guess I'm in the transmedia thingy because I also try to use the social media part, try to get to a wider audience. So, hi.
Absolutely. I should be clear that from what I'm reading here, and again I'm sort of a fill-in, the reason why we have documentary is just because it's reshaping the landscape, and any sort of burgeoning ways or tools or aspects that you may have for sort of reshaping and getting documentaries more seen, more consumed, and whether it be purely documentaries or things within the transmedia realm. So perhaps I can speak to you about sort of which platforms your documentaries have been on, and struggles you may have experienced and ways you overcame them.
Oh, thank you so much. I started a decade ago. Of course, the struggle for me are always the same financially, but I made a huge journey moving to United States from Italy, and since my first documentary, I started to partner my films with, in particular, universities, because in some places, in particular in North America, universities are a great tools where they host a documentary, they pay fees, screening rights, and you can organize a lot of tours. So since 10 years, I made more than 300 different universities, and with my company, Do the Right Films, I started to have my own distribution, and this was great because before starting a documentary, I knew exactly to have an audience. So film festival, television, or other things were and are for me an ancillary benefits, but it's not the first goal of my work. And my last work that we will be shown today, it's about the African presence in Renaissance Europe. So I tell the story of the Africans who were in Europe in the 15th, 16th century in different countries, including France. And this was for me my huge achievement in terms of multi-platform, because I started this work targeting the idea to bring into university and also schools and museums, of course. And we started a huge tour this year from February. But last year there was this unprecedented selection at the Venice Biennale of Art in the Central Pavilion, so the main show, and so this documentary has been shown there. Even it's a real linear documentary, so it's not visual contemporary art. But this was for me, and maybe for those who are also working in the documentaries, not video experimental, but classic documentary styles, maybe a way to interact with different kind of venues that can also accelerate or enter in dialogue with different audiences. And of course, now I'm Me too, because all my documentaries are about history. I'm exploring, by the way, the idea how to use AI and social media as maybe a complement or things to maybe launch the films, the crowdfunding, or sometimes simply working on a different edition. So the documentary could be one thing, then you can generate something for the social media about the same topic.
Okay, absolutely.
I think I approached transmedia purely by accident when I first started directing. I did a fashion film called Versailles 73 American Runway Revolution about the Black models who literally helped America enter the pret-a-porter space, right? Ready to wear, because at the time in 1973, America was not a part of the conversation in fashion. And there were 12 Black models, including Beth Ann Hardison, Pat Cleveland, and Beth Ann is Kadeem Hardison's mom, if you ever watched A Different World. That's his mom. So she was one of these amazing Black models in Paris that really helped America create a space. So the transmedia part came purely by accident. I did a documentary. That documentary became a bit of a fashion conversation, and that conversation led the film to open New York Fashion Week, Toronto Fashion Week in about 4 to 6 different countries around the world, and I really began to understand that, wow, the film itself certainly plays in theater, but the experience of the film and the conversation around the film has a life in Fashion Week, has a life in museums, and has a life in universities, particularly at FIT and Pratt, and universities that were interested in fashion. So that created this transmedia experience that I didn't know was gonna happen, but happened on the basis of the film itself, being able to create and stimulate and inspire conversations. So, and it happened on my second documentary, which was about African Americans at the 1936 Olympics in Germany, in Berlin, and that created an opportunity to publish a 400-page book on Simon & Schuster because all the research that went into the film. And so I didn't intend to become an author. I certainly didn't intend to have a Simon & Schuster book deal, although I was happy to get one. But that was a result of the research that was involved. 4 years of research involved in unpacking the experience of African Americans in Berlin, Germany, with Adolf Hitler. So 400 pages later, there was a new media form for a documentary that I had done.
Understood.
Hope that answers.
No, yeah, it did very well. And I just want, before we get to our last speaker, I just want to briefly say, Fred's film is We Were Here, which is at 4 p.m. going to be screened. He was rather modest in presenting it, so just wanted to put that out there. But yes, and also, Melissa, do you have anything to speak about in terms of that? No. You're set? Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. I just think that that what you were touching on in terms of like stumbling into sort of this transmedia narrative of it is really wonderful, because I think that also comes from creatives when you have the opportunity to see the bigger picture, or to see a story which you feel should be told, but then through telling it you realize that it's this thing, this golem which is twice the size you originally thought it would be. So it can be very challenging to sort of parlay that into a whole nother project in some respects. But may I ask, in terms of the direct, so you also did Black Wall Street, is that correct?
I did.
Nice. Did you find that there was any sort of immersive or responsive, in the same ways that in Versailles, the fashion one, but there seemed to be sort of immersive response? Did you find that with Black Wall Street?
Well, I think with the Black Wall Street one, it's tricky because it was on OWN, so it had the halo of Oprah, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that created some immersive activity that was independent of me.
Sure.
But certainly that particular 2-part docuseries aired on the 100th anniversary of the actual massacre of Black Wall Street, and it aired on OWN and Discovery Plus on that day. So there were a lot of activities that were happening within the community, and so we became a part of that as a function of some of the network work. I would say more so than what I did. I think my job was to make sure that we had a 2-part docuseries about a subject people were uncomfortable speaking about, and humanizing who the people were that were a part of it, who were victims, who were survivors, who built a community for Black people where there were 6 to 7 millionaires, you know, in the early 1900s, right? So it was extraordinary. So I wanted to make sure that the extraordinary nature of what was done was equal to the conversation about the massacre, right? Because I just didn't want it to be like trauma porn in that way.
Of course, which we spoke about in previous panels as well. One last thing about Black Wall Street. May I ask, was in close to the release of that Watchmen TV series that also saw special?
Yes, actually it was. So it's like all of that was
serendipitous, yes.
Right, but coming close to the 100th anniversary, right? So there was a lot of conversation, and so on HBO you had this incredible show, and then from my perspective, I wanted to really look at the people, and I learned so much about it. And what was interesting about it was that there were photographs that had never been shown that we were able to show. There was footage that had never been seen that people had held on to for 100 years almost. So that told the story of Black people. So that erasure was what I was trying to counter.
That's very interesting, absolutely. And Yodit, I wondered if you could speak on the sort of work you're doing as a TV, is it TV documentary as well? So it shows directly, or how does that work for you?
So the TV program is completely different. I mean, similar, but on TV I have a TV show that I direct and host. It's called Ambassador. So what we do is I interview ambassadors and ministers around the world, and we talk about history, culture, and diplomacy. So it's mostly like connecting countries between each other, because there are many countries that in Ethiopia that we don't really know about, but by bringing these ambassadors, so we make it very easy, you know, like the conversation would be like this, we would do very easy. And so that's one program I do, and the other one is I make a documentary about our culture, history, about Ethiopia, but showing it our story told by ourselves. So most of the time our stories are being told by a second party that comes from outside and tell our stories. But a story is always better when it's told by the owner of the storyteller.
Absolutely.
So, and there are many things like our traditions that we don't really create something beautiful to show the world. So that's what I embarked myself into making that.
That's wonderful. May I briefly speak on, you mentioned that it's often told through other people's voices.
Yes.
What's the most common sort of portrayal, whether it be nationally, and what is the sort of general texture or taste that you feel is meant to be perceived when they create it?
So for me, I mean, I got into this, like I started all of my journey as a teenager when I was in Europe, because I went to school in Madrid. So I was there, and every time I meet someone, they would ask, where are you from? And I would say, I'm from Ethiopia. So the first thing someone would say to me was like, oh, like, are you guys still hungry? Or like, so where is Ethiopia? Or, you know, like, so at the beginning, I used to get upset because I'm like, no, you know, like, and they were puzzled. How are you here studying here? So at the beginning, I would try to explain, no, it's this, it's this, it's this. And then I would go to YouTube to look for something to show, but there wasn't any. And everything that was on TV was, you know, like that hungry child with the fly in his eyes, saying like, oh, give $1 to... So I got to understand that it wasn't their fault. Whatever that was put out was from the narrative of the other person. So it's not their fault that this is the information that they have. So my thing, I started making this mini little videos on YouTube, like, oh, this coffee comes from Ethiopia, and this is our coffee ceremony. This is where it starts from. And then I would make, because as Ethiopians, we have a whole coffee ceremony. We don't just brew the coffee and then drink it. So there's a whole coffee ceremony, the process, and I'll make a mini video of that. Like I started with my little phone, and that video actually got such attraction that I was asked in Oxford University in London to show that and to speak to 200 educators. They were not even the students, it was the educators, the teachers who were having a discussion about it. So I thought about that as a teenager, and then I started making those type of videos, and then got to a bigger platform like TV. And then now I want to get to a bigger platform, and I'm doing them in English. The mini videos I was doing was in English, but now I made a bigger documentary that's in English that I want to sell, so it can be out there for people to see. I don't like the approach of like always blaming someone, because we tried that. We've been doing that. It's not working. And I learned that, I think, also from the Spanish. You know, the Spanish have been colonized, I think, like for 400 years by the Moors. You never hear them being a victim. Like, they would definitely hide that. They would never, you know, they have that hate towards them, but they will never admit to it, you know, like, so they're like pushing. And I think that's very good, because when we go always with the approach of the victim mentality, we will never reach it. So I approached the way, I'm just going to talk about me. I am fabulous. I'm amazing. I look great. And then they will believe you the more, you know, like you know, because what's not to believe? I am amazing. Look at my beautiful culture. Our coffee is amazing, and it is amazing. You know, so I approached that way of showcasing, and I made an amazing film, which will be which will be screened on the 19th, I think. Yes, on the 19th, on Monday. So you are all invited to come and see this amazing documentary.
At what time is this world-changing documentary?
Yes, this world-changing and beautiful documentary is, I think, at 11:30. Yes.
Okay, make sure you're all there. 11:30.
Don't forget to come and be wowed by beauty.
100%. And I just to speak on that briefly, I mean, I studied history as my first higher education, and I love history. I consume it in all cases, and I recently made a new friend here at Cannes who's Ethiopian, and he said he was Ethiopian, and I was like, oh, you're from Addis Ababa, and he was like, oh, what? No one knows about that, and I was like, yeah, and I was like, oh, I could talk about this and this, and the African conference, and I was able to, you know, spread facts, and he said, and it was really quite humbling, he said, thank you for seeing us.
Yeah.
And there's an aspect of that in documentary film work,
Yeah.
where these stories that are told are ones that are truly connecting to people who often feel unseen,
Yeah.
or that their voices are much quieter than those around them. Which is also messed up for Ethiopia, which is like the heart of Africa as well. So that's
Exactly.
a whole different concept, but I mean, yeah, in general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we are a country, we've never been colonized. We have our culture intact. We have our own food, we have our own calendar, we have our own letters, numbers.
The original Bible.
Original Bible.
Yeah.
It's the human being, like the first human that was found is in Ethiopia. Like, we have all of these amazing things, but we are not out there telling our stories. So it's on us to tell our story. It's not on somebody else, it's on us. So that's why I embarked into this journey, telling our own story. Because somebody else, they will tell my story, but whatever is convenient for them, whatever makes money. And what makes funny is sadness and darkness and poverty and this and that. No, I am not. I am okay, but you know, here it is.
Absolutely. So I'd like to just very briefly sort of go around and just say in 2 minutes or so, and it can just be, you know, bullet points, lightning round, things that are relating to you, to your culture, whether it be Italy, whether it be Ghana for yourself, Fred, and the stories that you feel need to be told and will be told by either yourself or someone else who can properly do so. What are those stories, if you had to just like list a few? Just bang them out.
Okay, for my entire career, I made only films that are connected between history, Europe, and the African descent in Europe. Even, of course, I'm also Ghanaian descent. And now I'm working on a project about a black saint, born and raised in the 15th century in Sicily, Palermo. His name is Saint Benedict. As a documentary, but as a video that I would like to, because now I really would like to experiment after the Biennale of Art of Venice. I would like to to experiment also with installation. So for this reason, I will do my first work entirely in Ghana. That is about the Adinkra symbols. So through these fabulous symbols, I would like to investigate much more things about the history of Ghana, the religion, the spirituality. That's it. So it will be a journey into also my story.
Thank you.
I think what's really interesting for me is that on the scripted side, I'm interested in expat stories because we don't generally see those. You don't get a lot of African American stories outside of. I live in Atlanta, so outside of Atlanta, New York, LA, Detroit, DC, etc. But taking that experience and moving it geographically, I'm also interested in the Harlem Renaissance on the scripted side and all of the women who were behind the names that we all know, like Langston Hughes and W.E.B. So those interesting women who literally kind of shouldered and ushered in the Harlem Renaissance, I'm interested in that. And I'm interested in basic stories about Black families, regardless of where they reside, regardless of the decade or the century or the place. That's what I'm interested in, and always interested in a sports story. I love sports, so always interested in that.
For sure. I thought they should have done so with the Jackie Robinson one, but that's an aside.
We'll talk about that. Yes, we'll sidebar that.
For sure. And for yourself, Peter?
Well, I just started this, so.
Oh, and I need the Ethiopian coffee service tutorial, please.
Exactly. So that's what I want to put out, our story told by ourselves. Yeah.
So, I mean to say a specific story, as someone who studies history, I know there are certain events that I'm like, if someone could tell this the right way, it would win everything. It would just be the most watched thing of all time. And I'm wondering if there are any events or sort of moments in history, or Ethiopian history, or something that connects to your own personal story, or something that connected to you about your culture.
Yeah, I mean, I do mostly culture because the history, I don't really touch history, especially now, because with politics and everything, everybody wants to tell their own stories and they're fighting over something that happened hundreds of years ago, and they're creating genocide and all of this nonsense as if we're someone who's going to live for hundreds of years. We forget we're dust. So for me, I am focusing more on showing what's now, what's happening, and some of these our beautiful cultures not to disappear. So like I said, like the coffee ceremony, the way we make fashion, for example, we all dress, we all wear, we all go around looking amazing. But those fashionable things, those handcrafts, there are many that started from Ethiopia. They're traditional clothes, but we don't know we have that. You like the mollet, this ear piercing, or those things, the tattoos. You see it here, all this, but we have our own traditional tattoos. Each traditional tattoo has a story, why it's done. Like we have our own traditional neck tattoos that we do. Why did we start that? What do we use? So those are the stories that I focus more on to show it, because they are in our everyday life. History, like I said, I don't like.
Important to me.
History is very important, but right now, at the moment, it's something that I can't touch. Because it started like for politic reasons. Some people will tell the story how they want, and then like it created a very big problems. Because if you see, as historically, Ethiopia, we have an amazing history, but for some greed or for whatever reason, some people are creating other narratives. So at the moment, it's something that I can't really embark on if I want to continue to get to a place where I want to be. And when you are in a place where you want to be, you can tell a story and no one can touch you. Even if they touch you, you will have a wider audience to listen to it. Right now, if I touch those stories, I will be somewhere I don't need to be.
And I'm embarking upon it in the exact opposite way, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the erasure of the African American story in America is so critical that we actually have to, excavate and pull these stories out of the archives. And actually, whether it's Black Wall Street or whether it's, Black fashion designers or Black athletes, we have to make sure that those stories are told so we can understand actually the politics, right?
Yes.
And so that we can be aware of the things that we need to be able to ascend even further, because I think those stories are fundamental to not only inspiration and culture, but they're fundamental to our own self-esteem, right?
100%.
And fundamental to how we move as creators and how we move as people who want to create things, knowing what happened before and connecting it to now. Like that's part of the mission of what my production company is about, whether it's on the fiction side or the unscripted side, because my mom was a public school teacher, so being able to hear those stories were important.
Yes.
And not hearing them now, I think is kind of devastating.
I agree with you. For me, when I say I can't really embark on that, I work most of the time subconsciously. You see, like sometimes when you have a soap and you say buy the soap, buy the soap, buy the soap, nobody buys because it's in the face. But I use the soap and say, wow, you know, the soap is really great. Look at my skin. You will buy it. So for us, we used to have 96 tribes. Now we have 86 tribes. So, and the stories that I tell is different cultural aspects of each tribe. So if that gets a lot of attention, the people will claim it. So this way you're connecting them without telling them to love each other. Because right now they're fighting each other. They want to be like, I'm the best. But if you're showing like slowly, and then that will connect them, and you know, if they like each other, then
Absolutely. I have one quick question, mostly with regards to funding, because obviously with documentary funding, it's often harder than some other forms. From the States in particular, I know that a lot of the funding, but almost no funding. Well, yeah, exactly, yeah. But I mean to say it's almost always usually private investors and so on, and then sometimes there's a very small amount for the arts. But I'm wondering if there's any co-pros or any forms of funding that you can speak to for your documentary experiences, for either yourself or for Fred.
Some of them have been like network driven, so I didn't have to worry about it, but the ones that I did, I worried a lot. But I think a lot of it was private equity, but it was also creative. I came from an advertising agency background, so being able to pull brands in that were relevant to the story that I was telling, not in terms of product placement or anything like that, but in terms of being a part of community engagement and outreach and giving them a role in making the story bigger once it was done. I found that to be very successful, but primarily like old school, banging on the doors,
Sure.
calling people, raising money that way. I despise crowdfunding, so I don't do it. That's just zero interest in it whatsoever. But being able to connect with companies and brands and other 501c3s to help support the story, I think that's been great. Finding certain family foundations and grants that are interested in what I'm interested in, that's been successful. But yeah, I'm a zero crowdfunder, will not do it.
Sure,
So.
sure. I'm not a fan either, so thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
It takes more to make the movie. Yeah.
So when I moved in United States, by the way, I was surprised by the amount of opportunities in terms of grants that at the time there were compared to Italy or Europe. Here it's funny because usually most of the money is for doing a fiction film. There are a lot of public grants in France, of course, and Italy, Germany, but few bucks for the documentary. In the United States, it's the opposite. If you want to do a film, it's private. And usually for the documentary, there were different kind of grants that now, unfortunately, most of them that are connected also to diversity has been suspended in the last 2 months by an executive order. So when I started with my few own monies and some donation. Also, I made some documentary through also the crowdfunding. But since I was able to generate income through screening that I made in the university and selling also to the libraries, you have to think that the market of libraries in the US is different compared here in Europe. They buy a film for the same amount that an individual buys, so $15 or euros. In US, you can sell your documentary if there is an interest for the university library from $400 now until now I try to sell around 900 because it's a very particular. So basically, this was for me a sort of business model to self-finance the following work. Maybe not to self-finance entirely, but it's different also when you start a project that the budget is maybe $90,000, and you invest $40,000 starting the production. Because when you approach a partner or other situation, they see that you just started.
Yeah, of course.
So it's an oh yes or no, but I think sometimes this speed up the process. And only in the last year, of course, I was really after the situation of Biennale, a lot of foundation came to support my project without asking nothing.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, it's a bit more rare, but it's wonderful when it happens. I just want to say we're unfortunately a bit low on time. I could talk about whether it be historical context or cultural context of filmmaking for hours, and I will throughout the rest of this day. But I wanted to thank the speakers today, and if we can get a round of applause for them, please.